Hello, everybody, or hola, mi amigos. Spanish for my friends. It's Friday. Things are getting a little weird around here because I think we're 5 weeks into some sort of like lockdown, quarantine, shelter in place, whatever you want to call it. We are definitely all in the same boat there. But thank God for Friday. We made it again to the end of another week. Looking forward to a great weekend. And today we have some good things in store. As we mentioned on Monday, we had Amity Rockwell on for a good workout with Coach Neal Henderson on Monday, and she is back today. We're actually kind of dropping in on her morning routine this morning. I think she's an ex-barista, but I don't think you ever really lose that passion or the skills for it. So she is brewing up some coffee right now at home because she's in California, and it's like 9 a.m. in the morning right now. So wherever you are, welcome back to the Wahoo All In live streams presented by the Sufferfest. Thanks for joining. Today we're going to have a Q&A with Amity Rockwell. Amity Rockwell, and I'll kind of let her speak for herself, and also Neal kind of present her, but the Amity is the 2019 winner of Dirty Kanza 200, which, if you don't know what that is, do a quick Google search, look it up after the stream, maybe. 200 miles is all you need to know on gravel. That's all you really need to know. Very difficult ride. Was a really big ride for her. We're going to get to talk to her about that today, as well as just some of her other kind of adventures and living in, she's down in kind of Southern or Middle California now, but up in Northern California, and the Grasshopper series. So really looking forward to this. Get your questions queued up. I'll be handling comments and questions over on the side here, and then funneling them over to Neal and Amity, and then occasionally maybe popping in to join the conversation myself. If you did want to take a little easy spin today, it is a recovery day, Friday, so take it easy. You can check out the link down in the description below for the Sufferfest workout. It's just open 30. It's just a 30-minute open spin ride at your own kind of intensity, but we do encourage you just to take it easy today as it's the end of the week, and probably have some pretty solid trainer time queued up for the weekend, some endurance miles. So I think that just about covers it for the intro. Let me go ahead and bring in Neal real quick. Neal, how are you?
I'm doing okay, Matt. Here in snowy but sunny Boulder, Colorado. We got quite a bit of snow, let's see, yesterday really, into today, over a foot of heavy spring snow here in Boulder.
Yeah, I think that, I'm in Atlanta. Amity is in, I think, Santa Barbara, and you're in Boulder. Different time zones, completely different weather patterns going on right now. But I'd say the one thing we all have in common is we're all at home right now.
Yep, definitely. It is, we're a few weeks into this for most folks, and, probably some people are getting, a little bit antsy in certain ways, but, really the key is just kind of continue on and keep moving and try to keep some structure in how you're handling things. And like today is a perfect day just to take it easy, go for a little easy spin with us while we have a little chat here with Amity Rockwell.
Yeah, that's a great segue, actually. Let's go ahead and bring Amity in now. I think she's done making, oh, hey.
Yes, I've made my coffee.
Coffee in hand. What did you go with this morning?
Oh, we are drinking some Dune coffee, which is a local roaster here, Santa Barbara. It's a Kenya Gatuya.
Nice.
You did a pour over this morning.
I did, yeah. I somehow I still don't have an espresso machine after that like insane plug I did on Monday. So
gonna have to work on that.
Keep begging, I guess.
Priorities, right? Priorities. We got to get you an espresso machine. So
I'm gonna stick with the basics myself here. Just a little bit of French press.
Oh wow! Thank you.
It's still morning time for you guys. I'm on to lunchtime.
Yeah,
I can smell lunch downstairs. So the coffee has just ended for me for the day. Well, Amity, thanks for joining today. We're really excited to have you on, and I know all the viewers are really excited to ask you some questions and hear some stories from you. especially DK. And I know I personally am really interested in hearing some stories about Grasshopper series. I know you have a long kind of history with that series. And it's becoming more and more prevalent. I think more and more people are becoming aware of it. So I personally am really interested in hearing some stories about that. But without further ado, I'll go ahead and hand it over to you, Neal, and hand it over to the viewers to ask some questions. And I'll catch up with you guys in a little while.
All right, Matt. Thanks. All right, Amity. So everyone out there, if you don't know who Amity is, you've been living under a rock. It's time to come out of the rock and just stay at home.
That's a little generous. No, it was funny. Like I did a podcast when I was in Boulder actually in February with who was it? Fred from Velo News.
Yep.
And he was like, yeah, he's like, when you won Dirty Kanza, I got to be honest, I had to go home and Google you. And I was like, excuse me? I was like, well, clearly you just haven't been paying attention, but
exactly. So you've raced, you raced on Team Illuminate for a few years, more on the road, right? And
a little bit, just here and there. I never actually did like a whole season of road. It was kind of like I would show up and like do okay, and then get over it and ride some gravel, and then decide I was ready for like to take a beating again and come back. But
move on. Yep. So now you're on a little bit more like you get to choose your schedule 100% with the Easton Overland Team. That's your racing with this year. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yeah. And that's been an incredible partnership. I was actually on like a kind of like very loose contract with them last year when I won Kansas, actually. Like in the beginning of the year, we kind of just like wrote up something silly just to like have something on paper, but it was all just kind of like, oh, we're just riding bikes. We're just, they just wanted to like get me out to some races. And I was like super down and nobody knew who I was. And so it like worked out great because I was like, well, shoot, like, I'm getting a few of my expenses and like, their brand manager, this guy, Matt, who's like one of my best friends now, but I didn't know him at the time. He was coming out to these races too and just kind of like helping me get dialed and then racing them himself. And like, it was just a lot of fun. And we were just kind of all friends, just kind of like doing what we wanted to do. But like, I was still working almost full time in coffee, just as a barista. And then Kansas happened and they're like, we should probably make you a real contract. And I mean, it was a no-brainer for me to sign with them just because like the whole beginning of that season had been so much fun for me. And it was just so genuine. It was like support, not because I was like, somebody everybody knew. It was just, support because they're
doing
like,
it for the right reasons. Yeah.
Like we think you're, doing cool things and you're excited about it. So, I'm actually with them in 2021 as well. So
awesome. Very cool. And let's see, DK, that was your first time doing DK last year?
Second actually. The reason nobody heard about the first one is because I had this devastating mechanical at like mile 50, 60. My rear derailleur just stopped working. And I ended up having to like some kind mechanic at one of the checkpoints zip tied it into like an easy gear for me. And I finished it with just like my 2 front speeds. But it was like barely before daylight. I limped in, but I had a great time. And I learned a lot just about the race itself. And I think, a lot of that was actually crucial to this year. So the perseverance paid off for sure. But it was a rough time. Nobody knew my name after that one, for sure.
Yeah. But it's that adversity often that's a critical component to having success ultimately. Like very few people just come in and like, win something the first time. Like it does happen every now and then, but often, you don't see what happens, in the, I know the great result last year. I didn't know the result the year before. And it's really probably that result the year before that taught you a lot.
The thing I tell myself all the time that's like the nice thing about this is that like nobody remembers your failures. And it's like for every victory, I probably have like, 20 races that went absolutely horribly. But when I'm like down and I'm feeling like really horrible about myself for those, I'm like, nobody remembers this. Nobody like, they remember the good things, which is really nice.
Super true. So let's see, your background, you come from a running background, right? Is that,
Yeah.
So
my parents, bit of an intense family history. My parents met in an ultra running club in Los Angeles in like the 80s. So kind of actually similar to like the Taylor Finney story, I believe. I think he also comes from an ultra running family. But so yeah, it was kind of, grew up in an environment that like normalized like crazy endurance feats for sure. And like kind of, just an environment in where like any free time kind of was encouraged to like get outside and like explore places and like, just like be very active, and that was the outlet. If you needed an outlet, it's like that was the outlet. And so just to kind of like grow up around that, I think it was really good. And it was like really good in that like I never felt forced to do it. I was able to kind of cultivate that love for myself. But yeah, I mean, high school came around, signed up for cross country, signed up for distance track, did 4 years of that. And then when college came around, I went to University of Hawaii specifically because I was like a mediocre runner, and they had like kind of a, mediocre team. And so I could go there and be like an important runner to them. And as opposed to like going to UC and being like, redshirted for a few years. So that was a lot of fun too. And I got to compete, in the D1 level for a couple years, before ultimately deciding that like I just needed to run a lot farther than cross country was letting me do. It was like
8K long enough.
Yeah. So then I got into 50Ks, just kind of off the bat. I was like, this is what I'm training for. And loved it, honestly, loved it. And it was only kind of this like weird accidental break from that led me to cycling. Turns out I'm a lot better at cycling. Nobody's ever going to pay me to run. So here I am. But I love both. I love both so dearly. And I can definitely, see more of that in my future.
Yeah. Do you still do some trail running then for like training, just a little bit like general fitness?
I run in the winter, probably like twice a week, just because I don't know, it's more efficient, it's more concentrated. And then I've been running like a little bit more now, just because it seems like a much more like reliable way to kind of get outside, not be outside for too long or like stressing anything too much, but like kind of, get all that anxiety out and then come home and like feel good about it, even if it's just like 20 minutes. That's really been helping me mentally. So.
Yep, definitely. No, running is super compact. So my background, I did more stuff in triathlon way back, but Xterra triathlon was really my thing. So it was the combination of swim, but then mountain bike and trail run. And trail running for sure is something that I don't run as much on the trails. I do more hiking these days, but it's pretty good to be able to get out and get some fitness in there. Get sore
from a hike, so. Cycling is so weirdly specific that I can feel like I'm like at the peak of my, athleticism, and then I'll do some random thing and I'm like, I'm trashed.
Yeah, no, specificity. So there is clearly a specificity. And so that's something you got to pay attention to. Looks like we have a question coming in here from Andrew Neer, who asks, Amity, how is training for gravel different than training for the road? How do you approach that difference?
I would say I actually do probably at least 50%, if not more, maybe even like 70, 75, sometimes 75% on gravel itself. And I actually think this is like kind of a marked difference between myself and like a lot of my competitors, or a lot of just like, kind of the general field that shows up to a gravel race is most of them train on the road. And they hit the gravel and their fitness is there, but there's just like a world of other things that come into play that they're maybe just like a little bit weaker on, whether it's like choosing a line through like a bunch of like fist-sized, rocks, or like, I don't know, even just things like pre-race, like tire setup and tire pressure and all those things. It's just like, these are things that you get a feel for from like actually training on gravel. And so I think when that is an option for people, I think it's super important to choose that like pretty much every time you can. Like I honestly can't think of like a reason not to. I find it just as easy to do intensity, just as easy to do, intervals or long rides. And so if you kind of have that out your back door, it's like such a resource. And I mean, even if you're training for road, I mean, gravel is just like, 1% harder. So it's only going to make you better. And so I just try to ride as much dirt as possible. And there's so many little things it teaches you like day in and day out that end up being absolutely essential, like race day. I guess, but like in a more general sense, I think, if you don't have gravel access, what's been a blessing for me is that gravel, like the number one thing for races like Kansas is just endurance. It's just not burning out. It's knowing like exactly, you know, the intensity you can start at and carry to the end. And so that's a lot of really long rides. Luckily, that's exactly what I love. Those are my favorite days. And so I do like regularly, I would say like, you know, every other week or so, try to do like a 6+ hour ride, and get my body used to that and like make that a comfortable place so that when you hit like mile 150 of a 200-mile race, you're like, cool, only 50 miles to go. Like, no big. Yeah.
Reframing it. Yeah.
So just generally longer, generally, you know, less sharp. Although, you know, I do try to, you know, bring that into play as racing gets closer.
Mm-hmm. With that, do you kind of think about doing harder efforts at the end of some of those long rides as like the mental prep, maybe physically like outputs a little bit lower and things like that, but just try to get yourself in like that mind frame of like, when I'm tired, I can push, like I am strong, something like that you build in?
Definitely. If I'm having like one of those days where I'm just going and going and going, I do try to bring that out of myself at the end. Mostly it's just out of curiosity because some days I have it and some days I don't. And so even just like asking yourself if you have it, I think is really valuable. But it's really funny for me to talk about like training plans and structure with people. And I'm sure you're like laughing at me as a coach because like I am the most disorganized, like messy professional there is probably. But I mean, I just think, you know, I think I can attribute like most of my success to just getting out there and trying every day.
And consistency then, like, within that.
Yeah. I mean, if running taught me anything, it was like kind of how to read my body and how it's responding to things. And how to just like know if like today's a day to chill or today's a day to like get out there and, you know, discover some things about myself.
Definitely. Yeah, that's huge.
Hey, I mean, Ian. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. All right. Ian's coming at you. Let's see. He has a question specific to DK, and Ian Boswell asks, should I use a 1x or 2x for DK?
So I have mixed feelings about this. My bad year, I was on 2x, but ultimately being on 2x because my rear failed was like kind of a savior. So I still had an easy year and a hard year. That being said, when I won, I was on a 1x, and I never for a second was like, I wish I had more gears or more options. The course, actually, they changed the course pretty drastically every 2 years. So like next year is the same course that I won on, but then the year after that's going to be different. So I think course plays a little bit of a factor. That being said, it's Kansas. There are no major climbs. So gear options aren't necessarily as important if you can dial in like what you need beforehand. And for me, just having one in the front is just like simplicity. It's just one less thing to think about. It's one less thing to break or go wrong. And then it's one hand that doesn't get tired. So, or you can, you know, split your up and down shifting between, you know, your levers and like, you know, just shift less. And then if it's muddy, obviously that's like kind of better just because you're not getting, you know, a bunch of stuff in your front derailleur, and it's easier to kind of like brush mud out of the front with a 1. So ultimately I would say 1.
Probably 1.
Ian, I don't know how your training's going, but if you're looking at like a, you know, maybe 15+ hour day out there, it might be nice to have more options just because I think that reduces fatigue a little bit. But if you're gunning for it, if you're trying to like hang out with me, then probably 1x.
Throwing the smack down with Ian. We'll see how he shows up.
It. No, I'm so screwed. I shouldn't talk shit to that guy.
Speaking of trash talk, let's see. We got something epic planned for August that I heard you had a little something potentially to do with. I may be able to either thank or blame you. I'm registered for Lead Boat, and I hear you are too, but there's a little more to it, huh?
Yeah. For the record, I did not name it Lead Boat. I think that name is ridiculous, and I laugh at it every time.
Steamville.
Steamville Lead Boat. There was a minute when they were thinking about including Dirty Kanza in it as like an extra thing, I guess, to accomplish, and that was Dirty Lead Boat, which I had more of a problem with. But
yeah, I like that.
So I guess we should give people a brief explanation. Lead Boat is a double header race weekend that includes the Leadville 100, which is a legendary 100-mile mountain bike race on Saturday. And on Sunday, there's Steamboat Gravel, which is a relatively new gravel race in Steamboat that's like 140 miles. I don't remember.
Something. Yeah.
It was a long
The
day.
black course is 140. They do have like 4 different distances, actually.
Yeah, there's a bunch. But Lead Boat,
Lead
the
Boat,
long
you got to
one.
do the big. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's this back-to-back weekend, 2 huge Colorado races. One's mountain bike, one's gravel. Although I guess Leadville is like an easier mountain bike. A lot of people joke to me that it's like the first gravel race.
Yeah, it's not super technical mountain bike terrain.
And then Steamboat is kind of a question mark this year because I actually thought it was too fast this last year. And I talked to Mark, the organizer, and I was like, how do we make this harder? Maybe there's a little single track this year. I'm crossing my fingers. But anyways,
there's an option in there.
It's a big weekend. Last year, they weren't on the same weekend. Last year, Leadville was a week before. And a few crazy people did both. I think Sarah Sturm was one of them. She's kind of one of my heroes. So, and there were a few other people as well. I think Jeff Kabush did both. Also a legend. You know, just like the kind of people you'd expect to do that.
Solids. Yep.
But basically, origin story of all this is that Mark is a good friend of mine. I actually met him like in the middle of Belgian Waffle ride like 4 years ago. We ended up on this like super hot long pavement section together, and we're kind of like forced to hang out. And by the end of it, we were friends.
It could go either way in a situation like that. Yeah.
I know, right? He kept dropping me on the flats, and I kept leaving him behind like every time it pitched up. But we were like, kept, doing that thing you do.
Yep.
Anyways, great guy, Mark. Called me about 2 years ago and was like, Amity, he's like, I'm starting this huge gravel race. I'm really excited. Like, you need to be a part of it. We're going to have huge payouts, equal prize purses. He's just like doing all the right things. And I was like, of course, Mark, like I'm there. So that race was Steamboat Gravel, and I did it last year. I had a hard time. It was a really fast race. We just like lucked out with conditions, and speeds were like averaging over 20 miles an hour, and I was dropped. It was also like mid of a very long season for me. Anyways, he calls me when the dates for everything were announced this year, like in early fall, I guess it was. And he calls me, and he was like, he knew I'd been like really, really wanting to do Leadville, and that this was the year I planned to do it for the first time. After mountain biking a little more, after kind of like seeing it as just one of like the most prestigious races. He called me, and he was like, Amity, he's like, I'm so sorry. He's like, I had no choice. We were looking at so many dates. He's like, but Steamboat's the same weekend as Leadville. And he's like, I just really hope you'll still consider my race. And I just kind of like paused for a second. And I was like, wait, like Steamboat's on Sunday, right? I was like, that's a different day. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I was like, how close is Leadville to Steamboat? And it's like, it's a reasonable drive. And I was like, Mark, like, whatever, like, I'll do both. I'm there anyways. I'll do both. And he was like, you're crazy. And I was like, yeah. I was like, this is gonna be great. And so we were just kind of laughing about it. And I was like, this could be a great opportunity because, like, to be realistic, Steamboat would be a really hard race for me to win. But I kind of saw it as this like blessing, and as in like, if I did both, like that's a story, and that's like an accomplishment, and that's like this feat. And then I could like really, go for Leadville, although it'd be my first year, like you said, like first year, it's like, it's hard to, put that winning pressure on yourself. Mostly you're just learning. But I was like, this kind of creates this like huge, like all around experience for me, and gives me something even bigger to train for, which is, kind of always what I'm trying to do anyways. And I was just like, this is amazing. I was like, cool, like I'm going to do both. And then a week later, I get a call from, I think, Amy Charity, who is another organizer of Steamboat. And, if you don't know who Amy Charity is, you should pay more attention to women's racing.
She's awesome. She does a lot of awesome things for the sport.
Yeah. So she calls me and she's like, so we talked to Lifetime and we talked to some other people. turns out, you know, there's plenty of people, at least as crazy as I am, who all wanted in on this thing. And it just kind of, I mean, it blew up. I like to think I sparked it by being like, heck, Mark, like,
Let's do it.
I got this.
Double up.
But I admit that like, there's a lot of other people who kind of championed the whole idea and reached out and got support for it and, you know, turned it into this really like, you know, big thing. That I'm honestly like, especially at this point where we're kind of, you know, looking to late summer as like our salvation in terms of the race season, like that's number one. And I could not be more excited.
I'm excited too. So I was one of the few that also got selected. So they took 20 men and 20 women for the official lead boat. There's other people that actually got into both races independently, and they'll still be counted in it too, which is pretty cool.
Definitely. Yeah. And
all right.
Tell some of those stories. But a question.
We got Joe Martin.
On gravel.
Is there any issue competing on gravel with a 2.9er, or maybe even like kicking it old school, an older 26-inch mountain bike? What do you think?
I think it depends exactly what you mean by competing. What's cool about gravel is that, you know, ultimately it's a competition with yourself. And that's, you know, kind of what I always say is like one of my favorite things about it is like, you know, you can finish in the back of a race and still feel like, you know, you worked yourself over and you like, you know, did something. And that's really, that's great. I mean, you're not always up there. You're not always gunning for the win. So if by competing, you just mean like participating in, by all means, ride your 29er. I'm sure, you know, in a lot of scenarios, you'll have a lot more fun. I have to admit, like when I hit more technical sections of gravel races, like a lot of times I wish I was on a mountain bike because I'm like, damn, I could really like, you know, actually lean into these corners and stuff, like instead of like, you know, feathering the brakes the whole time, worried about my wheels sliding out. There are races that's like better and worse for, I would say. I think, you know, like Dirty Kanza on a wet year or land run. I mean, you're looking at, you know, even a 29er perhaps being the better choice. And then I don't have any experience riding 26-inch, I'm afraid. But I think it just depends on it totally depends on your goals. Do I think you're going to, you know, hang with the top 10 guys at one of these faster races on a 29er? No. Is that something anybody wants to do besides those 10 guys? Like maybe not. And yeah, I mean, I've seen them be faster in, you know, a handful of scenarios as well.
Yeah.
So I think
let's see, where was it? Old Man Winter.
Old Man Winter, I wish I had bigger than a mountain bike.
I was on my 2.9er mountain bike and I was having a great time at the front. I was riding way over my level of like fitness. I mean, comparatively, because I had that bike with that kind of setup in those conditions. Now,
so amazing about gravel. I'm actually working on a bigger project with a few sponsors about like this like whole like trying to define gravel or whatever. And it's impossible. Gravel is not gravel. Like gravel races started as like, you know, these like long races like Kansas and Land Run and stuff who are like that are on gravel roads in the Midwest. But then we kind of just like started using that term for like any and everything. And honestly, most of the like West Coast races, they're not gravel. They're not your like, you know, narrow definition of gravel. Even like lost and found out here, like I see people doing that on mountain bikes all the time. Because there's some like really busted fire roads and stuff. So like, so it really, it's about gear choice, and that's, you know, another option. So I think, you know, I don't think that should be anybody's barrier to competing ever. Yeah. I think the bike
and go for it.
The bike you have is the right bike.
Yeah. Out in California, I've never done them, but I've heard of like the Grasshopper Races. Like actually somebody I used to work with won years ago, actually, Anne Trombley. I don't know if you know her. She was a mountain biker on our 96 Olympic team, I'm pretty sure. But, you know, she won, you know, some of those Grasshopper Races. And these are, you know, I'm thinking back like 15 years ago in some way. So they seem like they've been around for a while, but I've never done one. Like, what do you know about them?
A couple years ago, they celebrated 20 years. So definitely kind of before their time. But that's kind of what made them like so like quietly legendary, is that like they were going on and they were like under the radar, but at the same time, like you have, Lawrence Tendam showing up, you have, Katie Hall showing up, you have Kate Courtney, these,
pretty significant, yeah.
Incredible people in this sport who find out about them and like make an effort to come. And that's kind of what was so interesting to me getting started. I mean, I was in the area and they're races that like a lot of like, local people in SF will just, put on their calendar, even if like they're the kind of people who like don't really race bikes. They put them on the calendar because of their reputation. For a long time, they weren't even like called races. They were just Grasshopper Adventure Series. Like it's not something that like pushes the racing aspect. And that's honestly what made them feel accessible to me in the beginning when I wasn't, going around calling myself like a bike racer. Still kind of like segueing out of my running career, like gently, not willing to admit like how deep I was getting into all this cycling stuff. But it was kind of that like weird balance where it was like, oh, this is, meant to be just like an enjoyable time. And you're meant to kind of, highlight like the beauty of this whole area. Like it's like out like coastal Sonoma County. Like there are a few roads that are like crazier and more amazing than those. It was that. So it was like this really friendly, like accessible environment that I saw a lot of like, women showing up to, and like just a lot of, friendlier vibes. It was like, cool, I'll probably meet like 20 new friends like during this race, which is not something you say about a lot of competitions. But at the same time, that was balanced by like literally like the best cyclists like in the world even like are coming to these randomly. And so it was like all the opportunity to push yourself and none of the like requirement to, none of the pressure. So for me, it was like best of both worlds. Like, of course I would show up to this. It was like, most of them are like a 2-hour drive out of the city where I used to live. And I just started showing up to everyone. I was addicted. I was like, this is the best of cycling. Even when I was like pursuing a road career and thought that would be my future, it was like the Grasshoppers were like what I secretly was most excited for all the time. And they're kind of what reset me and what like made me realize like why I had so much love for the sport to begin with. Just to be around so many people who are so excited about all the same things and not necessarily like, I don't know, like not just competition. And they've blown up understandably, but I gotta say like, even like, I didn't even see them in their early years. I was a baby, but like the Grasshoppers 4 years ago are fairly different from the Grasshoppers I've come to in the last couple of years. And that is such a good thing. And like, also this like, gosh darn, you all found out about like, this really cool secret I had.
Discovered.
It's changed them a little, but I like to think that, the essence of them is still the very same. They're still run by this guy, Mig, who is just one of the best humans ever. He teaches high school Spanish, like coaches the high school mountain bike team in Sebastopol, like, and then puts on these events just, for the love of it. And he keeps them very true to, their original spirit of just, fundamentally, like, I guess, giving people an appreciation for, the space they're in and, the freedom that bikes give you. And I still don't like to call them races. Have I gutted myself harder in those than literally anywhere? Yes. But, I think at their core, they're really not just races. And that's why they're so special.
On the adventure. Yep. So right now things are a little bit interesting in terms of like targets and races. Probably some of the things that you've already been planning on this year maybe have been changed around a little bit. What goals are you thinking about this year, 2020, as it looks right now? Like, what are the things that like, get you out of bed when it's time to go? You feel I'm like, maybe not today.
So those have shifted a little bit. Initially, my number one goal was to come back to Kansas and I guess prove to everybody that it wasn't, just luck last year. Admittedly, it's always a little bit of luck, but it's a lot more than that too. And so that was an easy thing to put first. And then, all the other races come after that. And so like, I guess kind of the way that things have shifted is in, that, lining up for a normal season, it's like, it's so easy to make all your goals results based. And I'm comfortable with that at this point in my career. I do feel like I get, markedly like better every year. So it's easy to kind of be like, I'm going to show up to this and I'm going to do better this time. And it's like, that's an easy thing to just like put up there and hold yourself to and not, really feel overwhelmed by. At this point, it's strange for sure. Kansas was rescheduled and it still remains a priority to me. As well as all the other things in the fall. So it's really kind of just like my training that's shifted a lot in terms of like timing it so that, I'm now trying to peak later and later and later. But we talked about lead boat. That's kind of an easy thing to keep looking forward to. And then, but I've also kind of had to like mitigate it with like, all of them are still what ifs at this point, which is hard to make a what if a goal. It's hard to look at this and be like, well, this is maybe happening and I'm going to put everything towards it. And I think that's just mentally like, a very unrealistic thing to do. So goals this year have shifted a little bit to more like skills-based and like growth-based things as well. I'm mountain biking more, not so much now that we're locked down, but like when things are less crazy, like I really wanted to develop my, skills in that area because I see a lot of mountain bike races, like kind of achieving the same notoriety and like, I don't know, like, I just like want to be at them. And like, there's so many where I'm just like, not quite good enough. Like the whole Epic Ride series, like I would love to take part in that. And I would love to, kind of work on myself until I'm comfortable, showing up to those. So that, and then just, just becoming a better professional. I was kind of like launched into this like professional world of things after Kansas. And it was so abrupt. And I honestly just kind of had to get my shit together in a lot of ways, in terms of like, forging brand relationships, keeping things in order, like making a calendar, like all these things that I had an excuse to put on the back burner because I was like, well, this isn't my real job. Now it's my real job. And so it's like, how do I just be a better ambassador for the sport? How do I reach more people? How do I like speak out to more women? How do I, encourage the like development of everything that like I feel is important? And so all that has kind of, risen in importance next to, racing goals themselves.
Yep. That's good. We have our final question I think we're going to take here. We have Andrew Neer. What are the can't miss gravel rides in SoCal? Yeah.
Number one, Belgian Waffle ride. That has been rescheduled for November, I believe. I'm afraid I don't have an exact date written down. But there's a series now, and there's a few others. There's one in Utah, there's one in North Carolina. But SoCal, Belgian Waffle ride, that was actually one of the first gravel races I did outside of the Grasshoppers. I was actually down in SoCal for the Redlands Classic, big road race. I had a horrible time. I had the worst time. And I was so disenchanted with road racing after that, just because I wasn't performing at my best. And I felt like there was nothing outside of that. Like there was no real, fulfilling experience I was getting. And it was, altogether just hurt by my not doing well. And I was like, well, I can either like do well here and have a great time and come out of it, happy, or I can do poorly and just have the worst time. And I was really kind of depressed after. And I was like still in SoCal. And a friend of mine was like, well, Belgian Waffle ride's happening next weekend. You should come. And I was like, I don't have a gravel bike. I'm not registered. Like this race sounds insane. It's, 120 miles, a lot of feet of climbing. And I signed up anyways. And I had one of the best times. And that was honestly one of the like pivotal points in my career where I was like, gravel racing wasn't as big yet then, but it was growing. And I was like, I love this. I want to do this. I want to stop riding so much pavement. But Belgian Waffle ride is amazing. It's just so different. There's no race like it. It's honestly by percentages, mostly pavement, but the dirt and the, off-road stuff that does exist is fairly technical. So nobody ever wins it who doesn't know how to handle a bike. And it's challenged me in that regard. There's long gravel climbs. There's like single track sand descents. There's like hopping over things. There's like this ridiculous steep climb at like mile 110. Like it just throws everything at you. And that's like what makes it so cool in my opinion. As far as other events down here, I'm not super familiar. I actually just moved to Santa Barbara in 3 weeks ago. And I was in NorCal until then, in which place I, definitely recommend the Grasshopper series. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to go to more of the little events here. Definitely.
Yep. Find what's around.
Yeah, no, honestly, you guys let me know because I will show up.
Well, the calendar has definitely been turned on its head this year for sure. I mean, everybody's going to be reimagining what a calendar looks like this year. Yep. So I know for me personally, Belgian Waffle Ride, I had a very similar experience. Obviously, nowhere near the front of the pack. If anything, I actually rolled out with the very back of the pack from the start. But I actually did not register for Belgian Waffle last year until I think like 2 days before. Like we sponsor the event, Wahoo sponsors Belgian Waffle Ride. And so I was able to get an entry, and I was not prepared. It was totally like very similar to what you were saying. Oh, sure. Yeah, I'll just do it. And I think my finish time was 9 hours, some change, but my actual ride time was like 10.5 hours or something. Like it was, we took our time. We had a great time, made great friends. I can't say enough about the event either. I completely agree with you. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. And with the new ones, with, like you said, the series, now there's one on the East Coast now in Asheville, which, Wahoo's located in Atlanta. So Asheville's a 3-hour drive, yeah, it's great. And
so cool.
Yeah, Asheville's a great place to ride too. Really good gravel. It's interesting. You were talking about the different types of gravel and like how Southern California and kind of West Coast tends to be more hard packed dirt, or it could be like really washed out.
Anything, yeah, it's a mixed bag.
Yeah, because it doesn't handle runoff, really well. But like on the East Coast, get ready because it's going to be chunky and it's going to be loose, and it could be really wet, or it could be, you're probably going to hit all variables at some point, and you're probably going to ride through all different types of weather as well. So it's going to be fun to see the West Coast kind of crew come out and race these East Coast races, especially as races up in Vermont even begin to get more exposure. So
yeah, definitely,
it'll be a blast. Well, cool. Thanks, guys, for joining. And Amity, I appreciate you making some time this morning and answering some questions, telling us some stories. I think we're going to blame you, and we're going to continue to blame you for Lead Boat, not the title, but the challenge.
Steamville.
Whatever you want to call it, that challenge, you will be responsible for in one way or another.
I can take it. Yeah.
I know you can. Because you were up for the challenge, obviously. So I think if there's one thing, with Amity is like you're always up for the big challenge, and I love your perspective on riding. Is that it's not always about the performance, it's about the experience. And Grasshopper has obviously fueled that fire for you. The community and building friends and having a good time around bikes in general. And then you start to see these results coming off the back of this just passion, right?
Yeah.
So it's encouraging to see for sure, especially as you said, the industry and kind of tries to define gravel riding, gravel racing, whatever you want to call any of it. A gravel bike. What is a gravel bike? Like, yes, you nailed it, Neal. At the end of the day, it's riding a bike. It's coming together, and ultimately, I think it's about a like-minded community, especially I think right now, in the current kind of situation that we're in, and as schedules get kind of moved around, and those are really like first world kind of problems, when there's bigger things going on. But the community itself, I think is coming together, and I personally can't wait to get back to the community, late this fall and start to connect with people again and just hear their experiences of what this has been like for them. And it's gonna be a lot of fun. So. Sure. Thanks, Amity. I appreciate the time today. Thanks, Neal.
That flew by. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks, Sola.
Take care. All right, guys. Well, that's a wrap on another Friday Live Q&A. We had Amity Rockwell obviously on today. Next Monday, we have ultra cyclist Jack Thompson, who will be joining us from Girona, Spain, where he has been on lockdown for like 5 weeks now. And when we talk about lockdown, we're actually talking about like in the apartment, not able to go anywhere type of lockdown. And for obviously someone who is an endurance athlete who spends, countless hours outdoors riding their bike, being indoors can be a bit of a challenge. So we're going to hear a really unique perspective from him next week. He'll join Coach Neal, for a workout on Monday, followed by what we just did today, another Q&A on Friday. So get your questions queued up even now for that. That's going to be a really interesting conversation. And he has some really cool projects planned for the rest of the year, despite kind of the rescheduling of things. In the meantime, if you're not currently a Sufferfest subscriber, go ahead and check the link down below in the description. Use that promo code for 44 days. Sign up for the all-in training plans. I know Amity is using some of those plans right now as well to do some indoor stuff, some stretching and core, and then and as well as a bunch of the other athletes we work with are using it. So I encourage you to do that, especially as you're kind of indoors right now and trying to find ways to stay motivated, stay fit, and stay healthy. And ultimately stay happy. So with that being said, we'll sign off, and I'll catch you next Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern for a workout with Coach Neal. Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend.